I often say that I see words as variables that, like kind of like in algebra, and we put meaning into this container that is a word, and there's some of those words that are very easy. A pencil is gonna hold the object of a pencil for pretty much everyone. If I say, can you bring me a pencil, you probably won't bring me a fire truck, But if I say, oh, I love you, well, what does that mean? Or the universe is love. Wow. I mean, it's okay. I sometimes I could say it, but I know that to communicate, it's not really that clear because we don't agree. Like the whole world doesn't agree on a meaning for that.
And welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu Taoist Master San Qing, and it's another experience, an expression of the universe. Be careful what you wish for, and I continue to get incredible beings on this channel, and today is no exception. I want to welcome to the channel Dominic Vallée, a DIY mystic. Welcome to the channel, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for reaching out. I'm really happy to speak with you today and with your audience.
Yeah. It's really conversations like this that really give people greater insight, and understanding sort of what that means to you is really giving people a moment, an epiphany of all things related to what they need right here, right now. And that's kind of like, I think, very reflected on the idea of a DIY being you're crafting your own reality, how you see fit to shape and shift it the way you want it. I would love to share with the audience a little bit about you leading up to this point.
Sure. It's always kind of hard to kind of summarize it and be impressive and sell my. We can't swear on your show, by the way. Can we?
Yeah, you can swear. Okay. I was swearing like a champ.
Okay, I'll help your show with the algorithm, and I'll try to refrain. So to sell my stuff, it's always kind of hard for me because I don't have like a very specific spiritual path or tradition that I follow or anything. And my professional occupations have been very varied, I guess. I've been a professional musician. I've made websites. I'm a graphic designer. I still do music. I also was in a tea business for many years. I owned my own tea house for a couple of years, and then worked for almost 10 years in a big one here where I live in Montreal. And but that's just the surface. And I guess that I jumped around from one occupation to another. All this stuff was really DIY also because I'm not formally educated. I gotta be honest, I haven't finished high school, but I learned all those trades by myself. And I guess, jumping around from one thing to another. The reason for that, I guess, is that everything that I did, my professional occupations weren't fulfilling. So I was kind of running around trying to find something that was really resonant with what was going inside myself, and that was a part and in resonance with my spiritual development, which was primordial actually in my life. That was the main thing. So I didn't care if I was washing dishes or uh, yeah, playing music or whatever, to me was this thing, and it brings us to today. I had an opportunity in the last, yeah, I guess it was last year and a bit of in 2022 also, that I had an opportunity to spend a few months working on my first book. And it just threw me in the right direction. So from starting from after writing the book, I thought, like, why didn't I think of that before? Like, my path, my professional path, is in having this kind of conversation. And I don't think I would call myself a teacher, although if people want to if they want to learn from me, that's good. I learn from them also, all the time. But keeping the exchange alive, and keeping the the search and the curiosity for meaning and transcendence, and keeping that alive. I guess that's what I aim for now. And I'm 46. I'm ready for the second half, and I think that's a for me. It feels like I'm on the right path now. So,
Yeah.
well, it was always the right path, but like, it all this had to be experienced, because I see how. Well, first of all, a good example. When I say I'm a DIY mystic, I refer to the DIY culture in which I operated for so many years, which is, I would say, the punk culture in music, but also mostly grunge because of my age, which is grunge is very influenced by punk, anyways. But the idea of doing things by yourself, get inspiration from others, but ultimately always try to rely on your own understanding of what you're doing, what you're going through, and yeah, I guess that's, if I hadn't been a musician, and like a bike courier and a tea guy, I wouldn't have the same things to say now. So there you go. I hope that was entertaining.
Yeah, yeah. I think what we should start on is like looking at your being a self-published author of this book that sort of goes down sort of a representation of this mystical realization that you're having and the path that you're on. And I resonate with everything you're saying, because ultimately, book read or not, it comes down to the experience, the experiential moment that you are in, the visceral, somatic, sort of like kinesthetic response that you're having is something that is tangible within this 3D reality. So all the things
Yeah.
that you're embodying, no matter how much you read, for me, I'm show me. I'll do the Pepsi challenge with anyone. I'm going to show you the Harry Potter lightning bolt moment. It's going to be realized, and that's the only thing that matters, is that present moment. So everything you're saying
Mhm.
is so powerful, because that's really the discovery of the individual's exploration of consciousness, in my opinion, is the knowing. And the knowing comes from the feeling, and it doesn't come from, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling, and that's where you
Mhm.
get this understanding of doing it yourself. It's an intuitive um, realization for a lot of people. They get to a certain part of development within this conscious journey, however you want to see it. And the mystical aspect, I dig it. It's my bag, baby. This type of stuff is all energy, frequency, vibration. And for Taoists, we've been in the alchemy and the magic for thousands of years. So this is our
Yep.
My favorite, all about the understanding of deeper realizing that everything is one and all is one is all, and that sort of
Yeah.
power that you can get from that. And so I appreciate the student is the teacher is the student, and so there's never a
Mhm.
moment where you're not acquiring a sense of awareness from your environment, from the people that you interact with, and you are no exception, my friend. So let's speak of the book that you self-published and what it
Mhm.
dives deep on, and how is it a reflection of your current journey right now?
Yeah, it's the book is called. Can I don't know if I can reach it
Yeah,
from here. Yeah, got it.
yeah, yeah.
I can actually show it. Well, that's the how do you the proof copy. So there's kind of a big line on it, which
Yeah, yeah.
is it's not there usually, but that's it. That's the book. I don't know if it's only in audio, but if your
No,
show
no,
is
we've got
also on
video.
audio, I mean
No,
it.
we do YouTube, and then we go to a full platform. So for the people that are listening on all podcast platforms, it's
You got a really colorful book cover there that I did myself, of course. And the book is called Zinfaendel, The Mystic's Path of Self-Knowledge. Um,
I
so,
dig it, brother, dig it.
yeah, it's, first of all, for me to write it, it was kind of a synthesis of like of all the experiences I've had in my life, and all the realizations. And for me to write it at first was to the idea was to separate the how do they say in English, the wheat from the chaff? Is that it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, to separate the bull stuff from the good stuff. And for me, and then with the good stuff left, try to frame it as clearly as I could. And that process was for myself, but also for others. And it's interesting because a lot of authors they sometimes they say that they write the book for only one person, or they have only one person in mind. And for me, this book, it was my mom, because she maybe indirectly, I don't know how intentional it was, but she was the one who introduced me to spirituality. And although we have very different views, I wanted her to to be able to understand what I'm saying. So, and I have a more an intellectual um, tendency, try to well, sorry. Yeah, just trying to understand things on an intellectual level. And sometimes I know that for her, at least, I would lose her. She's more of a intuitive person. And so I didn't write it for her, but it was always something in the back of my mind. My mom has to be able to understand it. So it resulted in apparently a pretty down to earth book, which was really important for me because coming from I have a background. We didn't have a lot of money, when I was growing up. And not only that, but I quickly understood when I went to school, when I was a kid, that, that's not good. That's good. If I want to survive, I have to figure out my own ways of doing so, because school is not for me. So that reflected on my spirituality a lot, and sometimes often I would come back to this idea, which is sometimes limiting, but I know the limits, so it's okay to just come back to that sometimes. So the idea of, yeah, well, that's nice, but I still have to go to work on Monday. So, like this mystical stuff, to me, it has to expand very pragmatically my material experience, because I didn't really have a safety net, but in life, so but still, I had this driving force inside me that was pushing me to always understand this reality a bit more, and I had to kind of get that to work with the with the I gotta feed myself situation. So yeah, so I guess if just more specifically, if I coming back to the book, it's an exploration, a pragmatic exploration of the mystic's path. There is no answers in that book. There's a lot of questions, and I from the beginning of the book, I really urge the reader to ask those questions to themselves as seriously as they can. I have a bit of a Krishnamurti twist, like Krishnamurti has been really influential, and he's really, like almost forceful in that idea of being honest and with oneself when, trying to understand our filters, trying to understand the way we distort reality to make it fit what we prefer, And when I say we, I mean this egoic vehicle that we inhabit, has its preferences, which are good in some ways, but also very limiting. So to be able to question all of these, the mechanics of this egoic vehicle, to question this reality with all the honesty, the brutal honesty that one can, I think it's at the crux of the mystical path. And after that, like it doesn't really matter if you want to be a secular adept or mystic, or if you end up finding a tradition such as you found Taoism in your life, which I hope is and I believe is really contributing to your own development. And so that doesn't really matter what shape it takes after that, but to be able to be very honest with oneself when asking those questions. Am I being intègre? How do you say that in English? Yeah, honest with myself.
Enough, or articulate, refining the true nature of what it is that you're looking for. You're just sharing it, the understanding of what it is and what it means to you and what it discovers. I mean, it really comes back to, you're talking about a specific path or belief system that people shape their reality on, i.e. Taoism, I think, was a jump off point for me. But in reality, it's just like, the sacred geometry. It all comes back to the center, all of it. All of it comes back to the center. So I'm really curious with this realization. You discovered the questions that you needed to ask to help reveal it for yourself. What, in definition, does mysticism really mean to you?
Oh, it's really simple, actually. And I think it's important to make it simple, because there's a whole bunch of those words out there that I often say that I see words as variables that, like kind of like in algebra, and we put meaning into this container that is a word, and there's some of those words that are very easy. A pencil is gonna hold the object of a pencil for pretty much everyone. If I say, "Can you bring me a pencil?" You probably won't bring me a fire truck. But if I say, what, oh, I love you. Well, what does that mean? Or the universe is love. Wow. I mean, it's okay. I could say it, but I know that to communicate, it's not really that clear because we don't agree. Like the whole world doesn't agree on a meaning for that. Just like for pencil, like pencil would be like something we agree on. But it's okay as long as we know that those words are sometimes the meaning of those words are sometimes very convoluted. And I think mysticism to be a practical word that we can actually do something with in our life. I prefer to use it in a very, very specific way. And it's interesting because when I was writing the book, I did look up mysticism in the dictionary, actually in the French dictionary, because I wrote it in French to start with. I translated it afterwards. And the definition for mysticism was so simple yet, and I couldn't believe I was reading that in a dictionary. Like it wasn't like some esoteric book like Rosicrucian or alchemy or Buddhist thing. It was just in that dictionary, and it was basically long answer for. I'm trying to make it simple, and I'm answering for half an hour. So mysticism is basically just the tendency for a human being to reach for something that is hard to put into words. That's not exactly what was written in the dictionary, but if I want to paraphrase it, it wasn't. it sounded better in the dictionary. I wish I had the I wish I had the definition close. But anyways, so that's basically it. Just this this impulse that we have to elucidate the dark, the unknown, and we all have. I think we all have, even people whom we would consider unenlightened or non-curious. Even everyone has experiences that words fail to describe. Even if it was just a first kiss, or a car accident, and how time stops, and like when you look back on what happened, it's hard to describe, and to me that's at the center of the mystical experience. Of course, there's weird experiences. That's another thing, but sometimes also trying to describe those too much kind of takes out the mysticism out of this very profound experience, So, but that's another subject.
Yeah, no,
was that a good answer?
Yeah, I really think that really help people understand. I mean, mysticism is sort of related a little bit within a Taoist model. People can generally sort of point in that direction. We're a little bit more in sort of like the vein of esoteric sort of like understanding of the construct, and then we get into the alchemy, and quite frankly, we'll go deep and it may sound biased, but I still believe we're second to none when it comes to internal alchemy. And hey, we always have that conversation, but I always go to proof is in the pudding. I want to see it, and there is no right or wrong way up the mountain, but show me.
Yeah.
I think there's just so many fragmented versions of these things over human history that it gets diluted right down to ancient script, to all these types of things. There's a diluted sort of like version of it. And then you kind of go, okay, well, what does it mean to me? How am I accessing this? Right back to what you were referring to, the resonance of this script, this incantation, this sigil, this experience is validated by me. And what does it refer to in a 3D reality setting? And, can you transmute it into, what we kind of sort of basically move in: manifestation, magic, physical healing, high levels of ascension. These are the sort of fundamentals that we go deep on within the Taoist alchemy practice. And, it sort of goes, it's all about experiencing it. So I would have to say, we're both in the same place experiencing, what is now, what is this present moment, the center of it. And how do we sharpen the tools to get the outcome that we're looking for in relation to our experience? And that can come in all different forms. You refer to Rosicrucian. I think that's like up there in sort of like related to internal alchemy, some of the things that they go deep on, yet it's fundamentally very different, but the same. And then, you get people that are speaking on a lot of things that have a lapse and crosses over. And it all depends on, am I watching Netflix or Amazon? What am I watching, YouTube or, Rumble? Where am I getting my information from? That's kind of like really the experience of the individual. And where are they getting their stuff from, and what is it doing for them? I mean, it's all comes down to that experience. And that's the most important thing, in my opinion.
I can only agree. And actually, it's interesting actually that we're talking today, because my best friend, my friend that I think we've known each other for about 32 years now, and he's a Taoist priest also. So got to the mountains and Mount, I can't remember the name, Mount Aimé. I don't know how to pronounce it exactly, but I only know the tea that comes from there. There's a green tea, very specific green tea that they make in that area. But anyways, I
was just going to say, when you're referencing tea, within that sort of infrastructure of the energetic resonance, we will look at where the highest peak of the mountain is, and then the soil, the direction of the soil, what is the depth and the nourishment that's coming from that soil, and then imprint it with the right type of magic that will bear the harvest of that highest resonance within the tea leaf. And so there's all these acclimated sort of like external things that you use for the alchemy of something so nourishing and so direct source access, which something like an elixir, like a tea, just say. So I can see, I can appreciate what the depth of your friend's exploration. Is.
I mean, and for sure, he's probably got a feel of what you for what you just said, because as soon as he learned that at the tea house I was working at, because they do direct import at that place, and when I told him, oh, we have a tea from that region, he really wanted some, like to kind of connect with that energy of that place, like he's all the way in Canada, like it's very far, but I guess it brought him back to that experience, But so coming back to Taoism Taoism, to to the mystical experience, and because even just since we started talking, we can see all the connections there is, even though our background and life experience and even spiritual development probably are very different from one another, but the center is very similar. And like I would talk with my friend sometimes, of course, for hours, and I don't know how many times he would say, "Well, what you just said right there is very Taoist." So
It
I have
sounds like
no.
me. I always bring that back around. It's like I'm always like, "Are you sure you're not Taoist?" No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And for me, that's a very good. It's a very good clue that in because you know enlightenment, if you want to call it that, or at least awakening, it doesn't belong to Taoists. It doesn't belong to Buddhists. It belongs to humanity, to the human. And whatever, if we choose a definite path or not, some people will come back to that center experience, and others won't. And that's why I think there's a big difference between a mystic and a religious person. Mystics are sometimes are religious, sometimes are not, and religious people sometimes stop being mystics, because they stop searching, and they don't their beliefs are shaped outside, and they accept them, and without any questions. And that's why I always say, I don't know if you know of Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, who's got this big well, it was a TV show in the 80s, but now it's a big YouTube channel, and he's interviewed probably thousands of people now, on topics like parapsychology, but spirituality, philosophy. And I heard him once say in an interview that he was interviewed actually, and he said that often the mystics within different religious traditions get along better together than with people in their own tradition, because it does feel sometimes like the true mystics are kind of a rare breed, even in those in a specific culture, or when people get really attached to specific ideas and kind of automatically reject things that are heretical. So those mystics in those traditions, in their own tradition, they ruffle feathers. So, but then you have the Sufi talking with the Taoist, and they can agree, because they're both mystics.
No, I would agree 1,000%. I mean, people lose sight of, even though I'm ordained in two lineages of Taoism, that's just the starting seed of my realization. All the
Yeah.
ancient practices are there, but the secret source comes from my connection with direct channeling over 30 years ago. And if anyone really researches the deep nature of Taoism, it started with channeling. And really,
Hmm.
quite frankly, everything starts with channeling. When you understand all thoughts of your mind are not yours, they're coming from somewhere. I just had an epiphany. I just had this incredible idea. And people don't realize that it's never theirs. It's just you're tapping into the source of all things, and you're
Hmm.
able to be given this version that is so meaningful, so powerful in its understanding, that you embody it, and then you bring it back into this 3D reality, and people go, "Oh, wow, I get that. Wow, I don't know what that
Hmm.
is, but I get that." And so Taoism leads all the way back. And I would take the Pepsi challenge with anyone in relation to the timeline. because the timeline is variable. But I started channeling 30 years ago, and I direct channeled Latsu, and he's still my teacher to this day. And I basically am in direct source with him on a minute by minute basis, and I don't get it twisted. I don't have any information. I am basically an empty vessel transmitting information to this very state. Just so happens it makes me look really smart, but I don't have a single access to anything. It's just instantaneous. And if I sit here and I want to just channel, and if I don't have any desire for sustenance, food or water, I can go for weeks, months. They don't stop. They will just give me the direct source. And what's the validation of that? Well, the validation comes down to, what does it bring to this 3D reality? And it brings some muster. It brings some density. It brings some riveting, energetic, like experiential moments where people are like, holy shit, this stuff is real. And it comes in that very moment of the individual engaging with the pulpability of what I speak of, what I share with them. And so, I take the ancient practices that are taught to me through my lineages, and they're very powerful. And then I up it another, 5 million% by getting direct source from the creators that downloaded it from the universe. I mean, the Chinese culture, as you know it, was basically constructed by the Yellow Emperor. The Yellow Emperor was the first catalyst that was on paper being acknowledged to create internal alchemy and the Chinese medicine system that is in China today. And basically, that was given to him by the Jade Emperor. And then that was handed to both of them by the universe. And their affinity with the universe gave them direct source. And I mean, that's our affinity with, as a Taoist, with the universe and all things that are nature, expressions of everything, is this present moment. So, it's like, it doesn't get any more real than that. So, I mean, a lot of people refer to Taoism as a mystical path, and I believe that they're 100% right. Now, when you get into religion, it gets distorted. Like my dear friend, the Buddhist monk Martin, would say, the dukkha, he's always looking for the dukkha, the distortion of what the reality is, and that's the emotional content that you frame your perception. So, people are doing this all day long, and that's okay too. But, religion is a really powerful thing if it embodies and embraces an expansion and acceptance of all things. So when we refer back to when you were talking about love, it is subjective. We always start as a baseline within Taoist practices as love is the baseline. That's the first jump off point because it's subjective. Love to you might be razor blades and bunny rabbits. To me, it's unicorns and rainbows. And until you resonate high enough, where you are really accessing all things, there's going to be that subjective like overshadowing. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just need to realize this is my jump off point. And so we normally go from love to something that's a little bit more universal, which is gratitude, which most people can tap into. I could go, oh man, you've got a beautiful beard, or here's $5. And you're like, oh, well, thank you. Just an acknowledgement of another human being, giving you something that's more receptive as a universal stance where I'm grateful. Thank you for that. And then you sort of jump off in what a Taoist would consider the Wu Ji, the mother of all things, the Tao, which is accepting, allowing all things right here, right now, everything as is. And so when you do that, you dip deep into these rippling effects of a multidimensional aspect, which would be referred to more something within a quantum model of understanding. We're just talking about layers of consciousness, but if someone wanted to get there, this would be the way to go. Sort of like, well, how do I understand this? What does this mean to me? Well, when you can shift into this, and this is why Ni Gong and Ni Dan, being internal alchemy, is so powerful within Taoism, is you get a pulpability. So you work out the system, you create the system, you mold the system, the energetic system, you fortify it so it is pulpable, it is tangible, and you can transmute the energy in any way you want. And it's valid. It's like, okay, I'm discerning, affirming information. Am I having a monologue or a dialogue? And where is this dialogue coming from? Of what ascension, what information am I receiving that would indicate that this is valid, this is truthful, and it's meaningful to me and to others. Does that make sense?
Clearly, and it's interesting because you mentioned, geez, I forgot. I lost it. You said something just, and it brought me back to my. Oh yeah, I remember what it is. With all that you just said, I think the what I think is cool about, is especially cool about Taoism, is that compared to other traditions, and I'm speaking completely out of school, by the way. It's just an impression that I have,
Yeah. And
because I have certain notions, I guess. I'm sorry.
that's all that's the only thing that's important. And I always remind people, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. And when you validate
Pretty much.
that, you know that, it's like
Yeah.
you will know when you make a statement like that, you'll see the distorted resonance of dukkha by the authoritarians raising up and going, whoa, whoa, possibly be embodied and empowered to actually decide what you value or what you discern or affirm as being reality. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Yet this is like a catalyst for a lot of those people. It's like you weed them out very quickly when you make comments like that, and they go, "Holy shit, that's not possible. Man. We need you to fall in line. We need you to have the system that will program you the way we need you to be programmed."
Well, I mean, I think it's important for me to point out that when, because maybe I'm going to say something that sounds very, as if I'm very confident in what I'm saying, but you know, sometimes I'm very confident and I make it very clear. But you know, like my impressions on Taoism are somewhat external, because my best friend's a Taoist, because I read some books, you know. I have 3 copies of the Tao Te Ching, and you know, I use the I Ching on a semi-regular fashion, you know. Anyway, so my impression of Taoism is that it's highly adaptable, and this is something to the person, because it's very, very mindful of different forces, if you want to call it that, the qualities of energy, or maybe people would call them archetypes in some ways, you know. And that's, to me, what's interesting in about Taoism. And it brings me back to because I practiced a Japanese martial art called kendo for some years. That's in the past, and my belly shows that I stopped doing kendo. But I learned a lot from that, because also my teacher was a Zen monk, actually. So there was this this spiritual aspect to how he was teaching kendo. And I remember when we went to you know, like competitions and stuff like that, where there was kendo people from all over Canada, sometimes people coming from the US, and well, especially people from the province where I live in Quebec. They would come up to me and say, "You're so lucky to have Richard as your shout out to Richard Goulet, by the way. You're so lucky to have Richard for a teacher, because he understands that there isn't one way to teach." He would say something to the group, to the whole, you know, when we're practicing in a group. But then when we practice what he just taught, he would sometimes come up to just one student and say, "Well, for you, it's a bit different. You know, you're like, for me, like I'm 6 foot tall. I weigh I used to weigh around 200, maybe it's probably a bit more now, 200 pounds. So it's not going to apply the same way for me as the next guy. And also my character, because I'm a more gentle person. I'm not very aggressive. And Kendo is a very aggressive thing. So he would always work on my spirit, like to be more of a biting, I have a biting spirit, you know. As other people, he would go like, yo, you gotta calm down, you know. So this, if I bring it back to my spiritual development and all the things that I realized over the years, and what I was saying also about Taoism being like the feeling I have of Taoism being very adaptable, I think it's probably a good step if for the adept, for the mystic, to understand how this, what I keep referring to as the egoic vehicle, which I feel is made of the intellect and the emotions and also the physical body. They're as as interconnected as we are. This vehicle is so. These vehicles are so different from one another. It's if from a certain level, when we look at all humans, it's hard to understand how different one can be from another, you know. And so it's kind of strange for me. I had a very enlightening astrology experience, you know. Like I had never, like, it was always like a kind of an interest of mine, but I didn't really take it seriously. I can't say that I take it very seriously now either. But I think that there's really something there. What I mean is, I'm not a serious astrologer. That's what I mean. But yeah, I had my natal chart done by actually the partner of my Taoist friend. And it was completely wild for me to have this person know so much about things that took me years to realize about myself. And that even some of my closest friends, you know, when I would tell them about how I experienced this life, and they would be kind of doubtful, like, well, that doesn't really make sense or whatever. And then I would speak to this astrologer person and I would tell her, well, you know, when in this situation I react in that way and I always thought it was weird. And she's like, that's not weird at all. It's because of this square here thing and this house, and you know, like, it makes total sense. And I'm like, wow, okay, so because of that, what is free will, you know? Like, how can she know all these things that, like, she doesn't know me? And as I said, there was some of those things that I just had realized about myself. And how can I use this information to understand my reactions to external events sometimes, you know? How can I use this information, not as gospel, of course. I would be contradicting myself if I said, yeah, if you find a good astrologer, just believe everything, everything they say. Don't question anything, but just to see how it resonates with you. And then when it resonates, how can you use this information, you know? So for me, it meant, well, it meant being more effective in my development, you know, because there's things like, for example, discipline was very, very hard for me, but at the point where I learned for myself the line that divides the kind of pain that's normal because you're changing, and then when it flips over to the violence and what is actually destructive, and traumatic, I would say, because change is destructive by nature. But so it made me realize how to operate my own vehicle. Basically, am I driving a Corvette, or am I driving a 4x4, a Bigfoot, and then so if I'm driving a Corvette, and then I put myself in the snow of rigorous discipline, and then I'm spinning out of control, and I don't get anywhere, and then you realize, oh, I'm driving a Corvette. It's normal, like, so all of these infos. And I think, again, like, to me, like a system like Taoism, maybe it's belittling it a bit,
No.
of calling it a system, but at least there are systems in Taoism. The fact that they're so adaptable, I think, it's a very effective tool. And I don't want to go too long, but
No, no. I mean,
because once you know your vehicle so well, you understand not necessarily the vehicle of others specifically, but how specific vehicles can be. And that there are things that are happening in the world that have a different feel then, because you can see, for example, like I'm a person who strives in I wouldn't say chaos, but I like to bring order in chaos, but I don't like to keep the order. I just like to make it make sense, and then just move on to the next thing that doesn't make sense, But that's me, And as much as I need this to be in this flow of constant change, some other person has the same need, as strong as yours, to have order around them, And one is not better than the other. And maybe I could close this idea on this. I often see, I don't know if I mentioned it in my book, but I often see, or rather, I like to look at humanity sometimes as just this one big human. Because as they say in Hermeticism, as above, so below, as within, so without, and also what it means basically that the macrocosms have their equivalent, microcosms have their equivalent macrocosms, and vice versa. So when you look at the big human, the big human that we call humanity, you can recognize yourself. Not necessarily because I want war, per se, but there are wars inside of myself, in this self, and this thing that I drive around on this earth, There are contradicting ideas, little me's that are arguing, constantly. And when you really listen to these little me's in there, they all make their point. They're there for a reason. So it's the same thing, they're expressions of certain types of energy. those little me's inside. And it goes, I think it's pretty much the same for each individual, you know? So I don't know when or how we're gonna reach some kind of harmony on this planet between all the humans, all the little me's out there, you know. But yeah, I think that's what's fun about it, although it's terrible at times. This life game thing.
No, I think yeah. I mean, I think you made a really interesting point in how adaptable and how important it is to have a method, and that's where I really like Taoist practices, because once you start refining the method, the energetic architecture, you're able to really play with different understandings of things. Understanding the fundamental point within Taoism is everything is energy, frequency, vibration, and from that, an energy has a vibration. The vibration has a frequency. The frequency, once obtaining that resonance, it will be yours. Oh, yes, it will. So you have to be able to maintain that resonance and to simplify all things. That's really the inner workings of how we're navigating through this humanness, right? And so when you reference the microcosm and macrocosm, and I love your analogy with the car. I use that quite often when I explain to a lot of students, because they'll come across a lot of the teachings, and when I'm teaching people things, the first they are subject to a duality until further notice, and that's generally the starting point of your realization. So you come into Taoist training either really embracing it because you're at a higher resonance, or you're there intuitively because you want something that makes sense to you from the Taoist method. But then you go, this is so slow. When someone goes, oh my goodness, this is so painfully slow, I go, haha, listen, this is the universe expressing to you an understanding that it's not slow enough. What? Whoa, no, I don't like it. It just doesn't work for me. It's not working. You're feeling the resistance. You're here intuitively, but the resistance is very clear. It's contracting very clearly within you. And as you start to regulate the energetic component, all things become synchronized. And so all of a sudden, your viewpoint of reality is really harmonious with the fluidity of the universe. And so the flow, as we put it in Taoism, we call it the Wu Wei, effortless action. Effortless effort is not conceptual. It's realized as an actual transmission of your experience with as the universe. And so, we get deeper into things, the simplicity of, like, you've probably heard of Schumann resonance.
Yep.
Right. So, we are a micro version of a macro, vice versa. All is one is all, as above, as below. So understanding that the within Taoism, this is the sun, this is the earth, and the lower one, which is the biggest twist, is the moon. And most people, this is where the fragmented internal alchemy is very fragmented and very it's nonsensical. I mean, a lot of people get Taoist practices and they're like, I got it. You're like Indiana Jones from Raiders of the Lost Ark. I've got the skull. I've got it. Now I'm going to levitate. I'm going to blow the roof off this thing. I'm going to have superhuman powers. And then they realize there's about a dozen things that are missing from the processes. And they're like, oh, shit, I've got nothing. And you go to the trouble of sitting there and putting your time and attention to a practice that doesn't bear any fruit. And that's part of like a humanistic sort of like viewpoint, which is what I start, I must finish. What I start, I must finish. It's a what they call a hetero action within the psychology world of realization. This is the process of a human being from a very sort of like neutral based sort of like perception. This is how I'm starting out. I've got to start it. I've got to finish it. And so the methods are always really profound. And I when you share about your astrologist giving you insight to who you are, we have practices where we read the energies within your aura, and it gives you a very clear understanding of their mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state in about 30 seconds. And I get the answer that you have. It's like, you don't know me. How the do you know anything about me? And it just riles people up because, oh, I'm in this present moment. And I'm not looking for you to validate whether I'm the second coming of Jesus Christ or I'm Moses or I'm a massive healer, I'm a psychic extraordinaire. I'm just trained in the sensory perception of that clear sense, and I'm able to see it with my eyes open, and I can instantly read it, and they're like, holy shit, this is real. Yes, it's very real. And it's very, and it refers back to what you're talking about, the systematic sort of like processes. And we're really good at creating cultivation that will bear fruit. You will be able to realize it within this 3D reality, and you can transmute the energy however you choose to. So, you know, you go back to understanding that it is energy, frequency, vibration. And when you realize that, and then you go and you take our chemical processes like the ones that we have within Taoism, where I separate electric from magnetic, I can shoot a spark of energy into your body, and you can go, holy crap, I feel like I'm getting like electrocuted, or transmuting energy from a psychometry sort of like standpoint that I can imprint things into an object, and you're on the other side of the world, and instantly you feel the density and the oscillation and the resonance of that doesn't seem possible, but from a quantum model is very tangible because of the simple understanding that all is one, one is all, which we've known for thousands of years. I'm going to just blow the timeline out. I'm sorry, hundreds of thousands of years. People are like, Taoism has only been around. Oh my goodness. Again, this is the painful part where people get caught up in their groove, and it's their perception, and that's okay. But bring that to the table of awareness, and let's have a healthy conversation about using that perception as an enlightenment for both of us. And I share mine, you share yours, and we create a wider lens rather than, no, this is, what do they call it? This is the only truth. There's an absolute truth, and this is it. And that's where people are like, I feel repelled and repulsed. I'm repulsed by religion. And so, you know, human history shows us these cyclical sort of cycles of spirituality, atheism, religion. And we go back over the cycles, and it's sort of like, this is kind of where we're at right now. It's like blow the roof off it. Hey, guess what? 30 years ago when I started this stuff and someone's coming to me for an exorcism, because that's one of the things I'm trained in, and that's part of the Taoist stuff that people don't want to talk about. We don't look at yin as evil. We don't look at yang as just a one cycle of energy as good and bad. These are perceptions. And if you're coming to a point where you believe that something is commandeering your very state of consciousness, there will be a lower watt sort of expression of that, because this is your transmutation of your reality. And there's nothing wrong with it. And I've never had anyone, you know, not come out the other side. These entities and energies are very transmutable and very real to the individual person expressing what it is that they're having. So 30 years ago, it would have been a psychotic episode. I don't believe it is. I want more answers. We go to the page of doing an exorcism, whatever. These days, someone has a psychotic episode and they're like, I'm channeling the Palladians. Oh, my goodness, I've got direct source access. I'm a healer. I mean, this is a different world order now. And I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome that people are now doing what you speak of as a mystic, the gnosis of knowing. You know. You know. It's not about me knowing. I'll give you the mastery of the energetics to help you know what you know. And that's the part of Taoism I think that you find appealing, is we give you methods to cultivate that and then have the knowing and use it. I always say it's a template. Use the template to enhance whatever it is that you're experiencing and your own knowing of the truth of who you are, so you can discern and affirm what it is that you're experiencing, and it's not a delusion of grandeur or a fleeting moment which is transitory. It's repeatable. Does that make sense?
Yes, in some ways, in most ways. I think the thing I would add, I guess, is just a kind of a caveat, and it brings me back to the book also. And well, I say the book, but it brings me back to my own experience, because for me, my my path took me. Oh, how can I word this exactly? Okay, so I had many certitudes, and by that I don't mean that I've had the same ones and then they all disappeared. By that I mean those uh, those kind of cycles of certitude. Like, oh, I have this new experience, and it's strange because I've had experiences in my life that people would call pretty wild, but it's weird. I never get to talk about them, and it's okay, because a lot of them put yeah had the it had the effect many times on put me in a new state of certitude, and it drove me for a little while, and then all the normal things come back, like it feels like, oh, my life is different now, and I'm not going to be the same. And then you get the fight again with the same thing you always argue about with your partner, and it's the same thing all the time. And then you break up with that partner because clearly she well, for me, she doesn't understand me. She doesn't know who I am, and she's a toxic person. And then you meet another person, and then the same fights start again. And then I'm I'm being humbled every time. Every time I have those wild experiences, and I get back to the same crap all the time, like, so my path drove me, because if I want to be clear, the little caveat that I just want to add to what you said, is about this certitude of, I know what I know, and for me, it wasn't it wasn't a good a good way to go. It wasn't serving me well. I and I had, after years of suffering, because well, everyone suffers, of course, but I'm a very sensitive person. Maybe I feel things a bit more sometimes than others. And then I just had to get to the root, like, how come I always get into the same situations, but not only the situations, like, oh, the same kind of arguments with the partners, or the same crappy jobs that I don't like, or whatever. How do I always get back to this idea that now I know what's going on, and now I have a really deep feeling of who I am, and like, and then just lose that feeling, so for me, and again, maybe that's a kind of an archetypal thing. Maybe I understand that maybe I'm just more comfortable in this state of, I don't know. That for me, that's way more important than knowing than be sure of what I know. It's this notion that yeah, well, maybe, but maybe not. So even when I had, like, for example, I had an experience once when I I felt like I was in contact with a certain entity, Maybe I shouldn't take that one for an example, because it's the deepest one that I've experienced, and I've it's hard for me to attribute it to just mental working, or I don't want to say imagination, because imagination has something sacred in it, and anyways, but still, like, as wild as that experience and as unusual and as deep as that experience was, I still had to go to work, and I still had the fight. And I have to question it, like, be very, very skeptical, but in the best sense, the only sense of the way that people who call themselves skeptics nowadays, they're not skeptics, they're incredulous. That's a whole different thing. Being skeptic is being able to remain in this I don't know, but just not lays out there, keep curious. I want to know, but I still don't, So, so for example, that experience, I don't exactly know what went on out there. Was that a true entity? Was that a I'm going kind of in a tangent here, but I feel might be a good thing. So is that really an entity, and that's external to me, or is that a manifestation of my own mental activity? But
Is that
then,
a
okay, if
question?
I accept, I'm sorry.
Is that a question, or you want me to
Oh, a
answer?
question I was asking myself, like
Uh,
and I keep asking myself, but then, and this is why I think this tangent is important, because our doubt, our skepticism, not being incredulous, just being always interested in knowing more, and it brings us to very interesting places that we never thought we'd go sometimes. And that is actually a good example, because that experience and other ones, but maybe that one even more because it was the most intense, brought me to, okay, so for example, if okay, maybe it's a construct of my own thoughts and it's just imagination, hallucination, whatever. Okay, so, well, let's put that aside for now. We'll see if we come back to it. Okay, so is that an external entity? Let's say that it is. It's not part of me. It's like kind of a, well, you kind of already see where it could go, So okay, let's say it's external. It's not my imagination, and it's really a being that is not incarnated. It's into a physical body, or for me, that being was made of a kind of a blue light. Okay, so does that being feel like it has will, just as I have will, or that I feel that I have will, Like, can it change its mind? Because I change my mind all the time. I just changed it. I was going somewhere, and then with what I'm saying, and then I thought, no, no, it's better to go on that tangent, So, okay, if this entity has agency and a personal sense of free will, what was its intent, But then, and it's interesting because we haven't mentioned that yet, but I also have a podcast which I started in November of last year, and I interview people. And the second person I interviewed was a Taoist priest, and who also had some channeling experiences. So I asked him, like, do you feel like those entities, and I'd like to, after I'm done with my rambling, have your impression on that if you want. Do those entities have free will, and what could, because if I encountered entities like that, and I have those really wild and life-changing experiences, do they have intents? And what are those intents? Are they following what would be more harmonious for me to experience, or are they there to throw a wrench in that? And if so, is that for more harmony or just to fuck shit up, because they get a kick out of it or whatever, like being a bit paranoid about what are you trying to do, man? So, but then when I asked that to, I should say his name, Ian Duncan. I think he's in New Mexico. Anyways, so really cool and super wise guy. He said, "Well, what is free will?" you know. So, because I think the way that I framed the question when I asked him is because if let's say that entity doesn't have it can't change its mind like I can, okay? Maybe it's a kind of just an expression of an archetype, and those archetypes are kind of eternal. They're kind of fundamental principles, and they don't change. I don't think, wood didn't become water. If it did, it stopped being wood. Now it's water. On a level of understanding, of course. So was that entity an expression of a specific kind of energy, or did it have this changing mind like I have? But then, if you want to take it back another level, what tells us that it's not the case for us? That we're not just the expression of a combination of just a wave. You get born, and a wave starts with different frequencies, but it's kind of a non-stop wave. If you throw a rock in water, the waves they don't go like this and then they just switch direction. They just go in one direction. What tells us that it's not what's happening to us? So then, if it's the case that I'm not even sure if I have free will, or how does that work? And by the way, I'm not saying that's not my conclusion that we don't have free will. I think it's a bit more subtle than that. But if in some measure I don't really have free will and things are predetermined, what about that entity there? So whether it has, like me, a kind of agency, or what I feel I have, or if it's just an unstoppable force of nature that just manifests itself temporarily as a being with a very specific, a specific imprint of energy that cannot change. Well, who cares about that experience? Who cares if that entity? Because if we take one step back, because we often say that, and spiritual people, seekers, we say that because it's a fundamental truth that we're all one and we're all connected. And then we can sometimes we stretch it out to the trees and to the animals. We're all connected with nature and all of that. But the thing is, we're all connected with the ghosts and the gods and the ancients, and in that way we're all one with all that too. So to bring it back to a pragmatic thing, because I had that experience, and the next day I had to go to my normal life, So what does that really do? well, was that a miracle experience, a miraculous experience, or just the fact that I'm here experiencing either this contact with that entity, that mysterious entity, or this mysterious entity that you are, San, you know? It's a miracle that we're talking now. That's the biggest miracle of them all, you know. So, to finish with this very long sermon almost, I think to inhabit this uncertainty in a very joyful manner and just being very, very curious, because I'm still wondering about that experience, and I love that I went through that.
No
But I
matter the
think
expression of like the expression of it, whether it evoked some type of like underlying emotional state that could potentially be fear based, or
exactly. I mean, I'm glad that I lived through that because now I can play the game of life. It's this thing that happened that made the game interesting, you know. And now I get to study it and try to make sense out of it. And now, like we're as we're recording this, we're I don't know, I can't see the date exactly, but now today, I'm more of the impression that it wasn't me. It wasn't my imagination, or it wasn't a hallucination for many reasons. But the most important thing that I gathered from that experience and all the other ones and the ensuing conversations is that it doesn't really matter if it was real or not. If it was yeah, if it was real, of course it was real. But if it's an external entity or if it's just my imagination, it doesn't matter, because everyone I'm talking with is a product of my imagination, anyways. So that's kind of boring. Like, people won't like this. They want it to be real. They want it to be external. I don't want this ghost to be a part of my imagination. Well, I got news for you. Like, your next door neighbor is part of your imagination, just as any ghost or angel could be, So from that perspective, I think from that unknowing and that curiousness angle, I think it's even more interesting to look at those experiences, because I just look at them out of joy and out of trying to understand what's going on. And I have to be skeptical. I don't want to stop on an idea, like it's not 100, it's never 100% thing.
yeah. No. I appreciate what you're saying. It's kind of like